Maya Chen stared at the contract spread across the mahogany desk, her hands trembling slightly as she read the terms for the third time. Marriage, 2 years. $5 million upon completion. It's purely business, Alexander Stone said, from behind his desk, his steel-gray eyes never leaving her face. At 34, he commanded every room he entered, his presence as intimidating as his net worth. My grandfather's will requires me to be married to inherit full control of Stone Industries. You need the money for your sister's surgery. Maya's throat tightened at the mention of Emma. Her little sister lay in a hospital bed across town. Her leukemia treatments draining every penny Maya had saved from her job as a marketing coordinator. $5 million would cover everything and give Emma the best chance at life. No physical relationship. Maya read aloud from Clause 7, her voice barely above a whisper. Absolutely none, Alexander confirmed, though something flickered in his expression when she looked up. You'll live in the penthouse, attend social functions as my wife, and maintain the illusion publicly. After 2 years, we divorce quietly, and you walk away with enough money to secure your sister's future. The rational part of Maya's mind screamed that this was insane. She barely knew this man beyond his reputation as a ruthless business mogul who had built his empire from nothing after his parents' deaths. But desperation made people do impossible things. I have conditions, she said, surprising herself with her steady voice. Alexander raised an eyebrow, such as, I continue working. I won't be your kept woman, contract or not. And Emma can visit whenever she's well enough. For a long moment, he studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. With awareness, Maya had always been practical about her appearance. Shoulder-length black hair usually pulled back for work. Minimal makeup, professional but unremarkable clothing. Yet under his gaze, she felt exposed, as if he could see straight through too. Her soul agreed, he said, finally, his voice rougher than before. Though you'll need a new wardrobe. A wife can't look like she shops at discount stores. Heat flashed through Maya at his casual dismissal, but she bit back her retort. This wasn't about pride. This was about Emma. When? She asked. Morning, City Hall. My lawyer will handle the paperwork. Maya's head spun. Tomorrow? That's impossibly fast. I don't waste time, Miss Chen. My grandfather's condition worsens daily. The board meeting to transfer control is next month. Alexander stood, moving around the desk with predatory grace. Do we have a deal? He extended his hand, and Maya stared at it for a heartbeat too long. The moment she shook it, her life would change forever. But what choice did she have? Their palms touched, and electricity shot up her arm. Alexander's eyes widened slightly, as if he'd felt it too, before his expression shuttered closed. Deal, Maya whispered. She signed the contract with fingers that refused to stay steady, acutely aware of Alexander watching her every move. When she finished, he took the pen from her, their fingers brushing again. This time the contact lingered. Fraction too long. My driver will pick you up at 8 tomorrow morning, he said, his voice strangely tight. We're something appropriate for a wedding, even if it's not the kind either of us imagined. Maya nodded, clutching her purse like a lifeline as she stood. To leave at the office door, she turned back. Alexander stood silhouetted against the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, looking every inch the powerful billionaire he was. Why me? She asked impulsively. You could have chosen anyone. Alexander was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally turned, something vulnerable flickered across his features before disappearing behind his usual mask. Because you're the first person who's walked into this office and asked for something for someone else instead of yourself. He said softly. That makes you either very stupid or very rare. I'm betting on rare. Maya felt her cheeks flush as she left. His office, her heart pounding with more than just anxiety about what lay ahead. As the elevator descended, she caught her reflection in the polished steel doors and barely recognized the woman staring back. Tomorrow, she would become Mrs. Alexander Stone. What terrified her most wasn't the fake marriage or the money or even the public scrutiny that would follow. It was the way her pulse had raced every time Alexander had looked at her, the dangerous hope blooming in her chest that maybe, just maybe, this arrangement might become something real. The penthouse was nothing like Maya had expected. Instead of cold, sterile luxury, warm colors and comfortable furniture created an unexpectedly welcoming atmosphere. Floor 2 ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city, but it was the small details that surprised her books scattered on side tables, a guitar leaning against the wall, and photographs of what must have been Alexander's parents. "The master bedroom is yours," Alexander said, setting down her single suitcase. "I'll take the guest room." Maya stared at him. "Is that necessary?" "I can take the guest room. You're my wife now," he said matter-of-factly, though his jaw tightened. "Even in private we maintain certain appearances," the staff talk. Their wedding that morning had been surreal. Alexander had worn a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, while Maya had chosen a simple ivory dress from her limited wardrobe. The ceremony lasted exactly 12 minutes, witnessed only by 2 strangers pulled in from the hallway. When the judge pronounced them married, Alexander's lips had barely brushed hers. But the brief contact had sent fire racing through her veins. Now, watching him maintain careful distance between them, Maya wondered if she'd imagined the intensity in his eyes during that kiss. "There's something else," Alexander continued, pulling out his phone. "My grandfather wants to meet you. Tonight." Maya's stomach dropped. "Tonight." "Alexander, I don't know anything about your family, your business, your life. What if I say something wrong?" "You won't." His confidence was absolute, which somehow made her feel worse. "Just be yourself. Tell him about Emma, your work, why you agreed to this. He values honesty above everything else. Even though our entire marriage is a lie." Alexander stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne and see the gold flecks in his gray eyes. "Is it?" he asked quietly. Before Maya could process what he meant, his phone buzzed. He answered it with clipped efficiency, switching into business mode so completely that she wondered if she'd imagined the moment of vulnerability. "That was my assistant," he said after hanging up. "The stylist will be here in an hour. You need appropriate clothes for tonight and the charity gala this weekend." "Stylists, Alexander? This is too much. I can shop for myself." "Not for the world we're entering," his tone gentled. "Maya, I know this is overwhelming, but society wives have expectations, and if you don't meet them, they'll eat you alive." Maya felt a flare of panic. Maybe this was a mistake. "I don't belong in your world." "Hey," Alexander's hands found her shoulders, his touch gentle but firm. "You belong wherever you choose to be. Don't let anyone, including me, make you feel otherwise." The warmth in his voice did something dangerous to Maya's heart. This wasn't the cold businessman who'd offered her a contract. This was someone different. Someone who made her want things she had no right to want. The stylists arrived with racks of designer clothes, transforming the living room into a high-end boutique. Maya felt like a doll being dressed up, but when she caught sight of herself in the mirror wearing a midnight blue cocktail dress, she barely recognized the elegant woman staring back. "Perfect," Alexander said from behind her, his voice rough. When she turned, the heat in his gaze made her breath catch. "Look like I belong in your world?" she asked, trying for lightness. "Like you could bring it to its knees," he murmured, then seemed to realize what he'd said. The mask slammed back into place. "We should go. Grandfather doesn't like to be kept waiting." The drive to the Stone family estate passed in tense silence. Maya's nerves grew with each mile, but it was Alexander's proximity in the backseat of the sedan that really unnerved her. Every time the car turned, their knees brushed. Every breath she took carried a scent. William Stone was nothing like Maya had expected. Instead of the intimidating patriarch she'd imagined, she found a frail man in his 80s, with kind eyes and a sharp wit that reminded her painfully of Emma. "So," he said after the introductions, settling back in his leather chair with a cup of tea, "Alexander tells me you married him for money." Maya nearly choked on her own tea. Grandfather Alexander warned. "What?" "I appreciate honesty, and she clearly needs it for her sister's medical bills. There's nothing wrong with a mutually beneficial arrangement." William's eyes twinkled as he studied Maya. "The question is, what happens when it stops being just business?" Heat flooded Maya's cheeks. "Sir, I assure you—" "Oh, I'm not talking about you, my dear. You're clearly smitten already. William chuckled at Maya's mortified expression. I'm talking about my grandson, who hasn't been able to take his eyes off you since you arrived. Maya glanced at Alexander, who looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. Grandfather, perhaps we should discuss business, Alexander said tightly. Business can wait. I want to hear about Emma. William turned his full attention to Maya, and for the next hour, she found herself talking about her sister's dreams of becoming a teacher. Her favorite books, her incredible strength during treatment. She sounds remarkable, William said finally. I'd like to meet her when she's feeling better. She'd love that, Maya said, touched by his genuine interest. As they prepared to leave, William pulled Maya aside while Alexander spoke with the housekeeper. He's not as cold as he pretends to be, the old man said quietly. His parents' death broke something in him, made him afraid to care too deeply. But I see the way he looks at you. Don't give up on him. On the drive home, Maya replayed William's words while stealing glances at Alexander's profile. When they reached the penthouse, the tension between them was almost unbearable. Thank you, Alexander said as they stood in the foyer. Tonight meant a lot to him. To me, he's wonderful. Maya said softly. I can see why you want to protect his legacy. Alexander stepped closer, his eyes dark and intense. Maya, I need you to know that what happened today, the way I've been looking at you, it's not part of the contract. It's not something I planned. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. Alexander, I'm trying to stay professional, to keep this business, but you make that impossible. His hand rose to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. Tell me to stop. Tell me to go to my room and forget this conversation ever happened. Maya looked up into his eyes and saw the same confusion and desire that was tearing her. Apart, she knew she should step back, remind him of their agreement, protect her own heart. Instead, she whispered, What if I don't want you to stop? The last thread of Alexander's control snapped. His mouth crashed down on hers, and this time there was nothing gentle or brief about it. Maya melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt as he pressed her against the wall. This was nothing like their polite ceremony kiss. This was fire and need, and two people who'd been fighting their attraction from the moment, while they'd shaken hands. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. This complicates everything, he whispered. Maya smiled, still dizzy from his kiss. Good. I was getting tired of simple. Maya woke up alone in the master bedroom, sunlight streaming through silk curtains. Now the events of the previous night felt like a dream. Alexander's confession. That earth-shattering kiss, the way he'd held her face like she was something precious. But the indent in the pillow beside her, and the lingering scent of his cologne proved it had been real. She found him in the kitchen, already dressed in a crisp suit, coffee in hand as he scrolled through emails on his phone. He maintained when she entered, told her everything she needed to know. The walls were back up. Good morning, she said cautiously. Morning. He didn't look up. There's coffee made. I have meetings all day, but my assistant will take you shopping. For the gala tonight, your sister called, by the way. She's being released from the hospital this afternoon. Maya's heart soared. Really? The doctors cleared her. Temporarily. She'll need to return for more treatment next week, but she's strong enough for a few days at home. Alexander finally met her eyes, and she saw warmth there despite his professional tone. I thought she might like to see the penthouse. Alexander, that's thank you. Maya stepped closer, but he immediately moved toward the door. I need to go. We'll talk tonight after the gala. Maya watched him leave, frustration and hurt warring in her chest. Last night he'd kissed her like she was his entire world. This morning he could barely look at her. Emma's arrival that afternoon was exactly the distraction Maya needed. Her 19-year-old sister stood in the penthouse doorway, eyes wide with disbelief. Maya, this place is incredible, Emma breathed, though Maya could see the exhaustion in her pale face. And your husband is really Alexander Stone? It's complicated, Maya said, helping Emma to the couch. But yes, we're married. Complicated how? He's gorgeous and rich and clearly crazy about you. Maya laughed despite herself. What makes you say that? The way he looked at you when I called this morning, like you were the only person in the world who mattered. Emma studied her sister shrewdly. You're falling for him, aren't you? Before Maya could answer, Alexander's key sounded in the lock. He entered carrying shopping bags and wearing a cautious expression. Emma, he said, his entire demeanor softening as he approached Maya's sister. How are you feeling? Much better. Thank you. Maya told me about your arrangement. Emma's directness made Maya wince, but Alexander simply nodded. Your sister's helping me with a business situation. In return, I'm helping with your medical expenses. It's mutually beneficial. Hung. Emma's skeptical tone made Alexander's mouth twitch with what might have been amusement. And the way you two look at each other, is that mutually beneficial too? Emma, Maya warned. What? I may be sick, but I'm not blind. The tension in this room could power the building. Alexander cleared his throat. I brought dinner from that Italian place you mentioned liking, Emma, and something else. He pulled a small wrapped package from one of the bags. Emma opened it to reveal a first edition of her favorite novel. Alexander, this must have cost a fortune. It's nothing, he said gruffly, but Maya saw the pleasure in his eyes when Emma hugged him impulsively. Thank you, both of you. I know this marriage thing is weird and businessy, but I'm glad Maya has someone looking out for her for once. Later, as they got ready for the charity gala, Maya couldn't stop thinking about the tenderness in Alexander's face when Emma had hugged him. This man was nothing like the cold businessman he pretended to be. The gala was held at the city's most exclusive hotel, and Maya felt like she was stepping into a different world. Her emerald silk gown hugged her curves perfectly. The diamond necklace Alexander had insisted she wear caught the light with every movement. Remember, Alexander murmured as they entered the ballroom, his hand warm at the small of her back. We're newlyweds. Madly in love. Can't keep our hands off each other. Maya's pulse quickened at his words, especially when his fingers traced the bare skin above her dress's neckline. How's this? She asked, leaning into him and placing her hand on his chest. Alexander's breath hitched. Perfect, he said roughly. The evening passed in a blur of introductions and conversations. Maya found herself genuinely enjoying many of the people she met, especially Alexander's business partner James and his wife Sarah, who immediately took Maya under her wing. Alexander looks happy, Sarah observed during a quiet moment while the men discussed business. Haven't seen him like this since, well, ever. We're still adjusting to married life, Maya said carefully. Adjusting? Honey, that man hasn't taken his eyes off you all night, and the way he touches you, Sarah grinned. Trust me, I know the difference between business and pleasure. Maya was about to respond when Alexander appeared at her side, his face dark with anger. We need to leave, he said quietly. Now, what's wrong? Maya asked as he guided her toward the exit. Richard Blackwood is here, Alexander said through gritted teeth. My father's former business partner. The man who destroyed our family. Maya had heard whispers about Alexander's parents' death in a car accident when he was 16, but she didn't know the details. The pain in Alexander's voice made her chest tighten. They were almost to the door when a voice called out behind them. Alexander Stone. I was wondering when I'd get to meet your lovely wife. Alexander went rigid. Maya turned to see a distinguished man in his 60s approaching with a cold smile. Richard, Alexander said flatly. Maya, isn't it? Richard's eyes raked over her in a way that made her skin crawl. Quite the upgrade from your usual type, Alexander. Though I suppose desperation makes us all reconsider our standards. What's that supposed to mean? Maya asked, ice forming in her stomach. Richard's smile turned cruel. Oh, my dear. Didn't he tell you? Alexander's grandfather's will has a very specific clause. He must be married to someone of good moral character and genuine affection. A business arrangement wouldn't qualify. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. Around them, conversations quieted as people began to notice the confrontation. If the board discovered this was a sham marriage, Richard continued, Alexander would lose everything. Its inheritance. His company, his precious family legacy. But I'm sure you already knew that when you agreed to help him defraud his grandfather's estate." "That's enough," Alexander snarled, stepping protectively in front of Maya. "Is it? Because I think the board would be very interested to know that Alexander's wife is just a paid actress. After all, I have documentation of your little arrangement. Bank transfers, contracts." Richard's eyes glittered with malice. "Such a shame. Your parents would be so disappointed." Alexander lunged forward, but Maya caught his arm. The entire ballroom was watching now, phones discreetly capturing every moment. "Let's go," she whispered urgently. But as they left the gala with Richard's laughter following them, Maya realized their carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down. And worse, she no longer cared about the money or the contract. Somewhere along the way, she'd fallen completely in love with her fake husband. The question was, when everything fell apart, would there be anything real left between them to salvage? The ride back to the penthouse was suffocating in its silence. Maya stared out the window at the city lights blurring past, her mind reeling from Richard Blackwood's revelations. Alexander sat rigidly beside her, his knuckles white as he gripped. "His phone? Alexander?" she finally whispered. "Not here," he said curtly, glancing at the driver. "Wait until we get home." Home, the word twisted something painful in Maya's chest, because despite everything, the penthouse had started to feel like home. But after tonight, nothing would ever be the same. The moment they entered the apartment, Alexander's careful control shattered. Damn it. He slammed his fist against the wall, his composure cracking completely. 15 years I've been building toward this moment, and Richard destroys it all in one night. "Alexander, we need to talk about what he said." "About the will? You want to know about the will?" Alexander whirled to face her, pain and rage warring in his eyes. "Fine. My grandfather put that clause in there because he was terrified I'd end up like my father, so focused on business that I'd never find real love. Good moral character and genuine affection." Those were his exact words. Maya felt sick. "So our contract marriage would invalidate everything. If they can prove it was fake, yes." Alexander ran his hands through his hair, destroying its perfect style. "Richard's been waiting for this opportunity for years. He blamed my father for their partnership failing, claimed Dad cheated him out of millions. When my parents died—" "What really happened to them?" Maya asked softly. Alexander's face went pale. Richard had been harassing them for months, making threats, filing frivolous lawsuits. The night they died, they were driving home from a meeting with lawyers. It was raining. Dad was exhausted from fighting Richard's claims, and he lost control of the car. His voice broke. Richard didn't pull the trigger, but he might as well have. Maya's heart shattered for the 16-year-old boy who'd lost everything. Without thinking, she stepped toward him, but Alexander held up a hand. "Don't," he said roughly. "This is exactly why I don't let people close. Everyone I care about gets hurt. That's not true, isn't it? Look at tonight. You walked into that ballroom as my wife, and within hours you were being publicly humiliated because of me." Alexander's laugh was bitter. "I should have known this would happen. I should have protected you better." "Alexander, I knew the risks when I signed that contract. Did you? Because I sure as hell didn't know I'd fall in love with you." The words hung between them like a live wire. Maya's breath caught, her heart hammering so hard she was certain he could hear it. She whispered. Alexander closed his eyes, looking like a man confessing to a crime. "I said I fell in love with you. God help me, Maya. I've been fighting it since the day we met. The way you put Emma before yourself, your strength, your kindness, you made me want things I swore I'd never want again." Tears burned Maya's eyes. "Alexander, it doesn't matter now." He straightened, becoming the cold businessman again. "Tomorrow morning, Richard will probably file his evidence with the court. The board will vote to remove me as CEO. You'll get your money as agreed. Emma will have her treatments, and you can go back to your normal life." "What if I don't want my normal life back?" The words tumbled out before Maya could stop them. Alexander stared at her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I fell in love with you too, you impossible man." Maya stepped closer, no longer caring about protecting herself. "I tried to fight it, told myself it was just the situation, the contract, the pretending. Emma was right the way you look at me, the way you've cared for her. The way you make me feel like I'm worth something more than just surviving. Maya, you can't mean this. After tonight doesn't change how I feel about you. It changes what we do next. Maya reached for his hands, relief flooding through her when he didn't pull away. We can fight this, Alexander. Together. For a moment, hope flickered in his eyes, then reality crashed back down. Even if we somehow prove our feelings are genuine, the scandal will destroy everything. The board won't trust me to lead the company after this mess. Then maybe it's time to stop living for your grandfather's approval and start living for yourself, Maya said fiercely. You've spent your entire adult life trying to honor your parents' memory by building an empire. But what if honoring them means choosing love over legacy? Alexander cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle despite the storm in his eyes. Do you have any idea what you're asking me to give up? Do you have any idea what you'd be giving up if you let me walk away? Maya covered his hands with hers. I love you, Alexander Stone. Not your money, not your company, not your name. You, the man who bought my sister a book just to make her smile, the man who holds me like I'm precious, is the man who's been carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders for so long he forgot he doesn't have to do it alone. Alexander's control finally broke completely. He kissed her with desperate intensity, pouring 18 years of loneliness and fear into the contact. Maya kissed him back just as fiercely, trying to show him without words that she wasn't going anywhere. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. This is insane, he whispered. If we do this, if we fight, we could lose everything. Or we could win everything that actually matters, Maya replied. The question is, are you willing to take that risk for love? Alexander was quiet for a long moment, and Maya held her breath, waiting for his answer. Finally, he pulled back to look directly into her eyes. Yes, he said simply. For you, for us, I'd risk it all. Maya's smile was radiant. Good, because I have an idea how to beat Richard at his own game. But it's going to require the performance of our lives. What kind of performance? Maya's eyes glittered with determination. It's the kind that proves our love is real. Richard thinks he's so clever, having documentation of our contract. But what he doesn't have is proof that we didn't fall in love despite it. Alexander's mouth curved in the first genuine smile she'd seen all evening. What did you have in mind, Mrs. Stone? Trust me, Mr. Stone. By the time I'm done, the whole world will know exactly how we feel about each other. As Maya outlined her plan, Alexander found himself believing for the first time in years that maybe, just maybe, love really could conquer all. Richard Blackwood had made one crucial mistake. Had underestimated the lengths Maya Chen would go to protect the people she loved, and Alexander Stone was about to discover just how fierce his seemingly gentle wife could be when everything they cared about was on the line. The emergency board meeting was called for the following afternoon. Maya spent the morning in Alexander's home office, surrounded by legal documents and phone calls, putting the final touches on their counterattack. Emma, despite her treatment, had insisted on helping, her sharp mind proving invaluable in anticipating Richard's moves. Are you sure about this? Alexander asked for the 10th time as they prepared to leave for Stone Industries headquarters. Once we do this, there's no going back. Maya straightened his tie, her hands steady, despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The boardroom was packed with Stone Industries, 12 board members, Richard Blackwood, several lawyers, and a handful of reporters who'd somehow gotten wind of the scandal. Maya felt every eye in the room follow her as she entered beside Alexander, but she kept her chin high in her shoulders. Straight, ladies and gentlemen, Richard began with a predatory smile. Thank you for convening on such short notice. What I'm about to reveal will shock you all. Alexander Stone has perpetrated a massive fraud against this company and his grandfather's memory. Richard's presentation was devastating in its thoroughness. He had copies of the original contract, bank transfer records showing the $5 million payment, even photographs of Maya and Alexander's cold handshake in Alexander's office. The evidence painted a damning picture of a calculated business transaction masquerading as love. The will is very clear, Richard concluded. William Stone required his heir to marry for genuine affection, not financial gain. This sham marriage invalidates Alexander's claim to both his inheritance and control of the company. Murmurs rippled through the room. Several board members looked genuinely shocked, while others seemed almost relieved to have an excuse to remove Alexander from power. Mr. Stone, board chairman Patricia Walsh said gravely, "Do you have a response to these allegations?" Alexander stood slowly, and Maya's heart clenched at the pain she saw in his face. This was his worst nightmare, being publicly destroyed just like his parents had been. "Everything Mr. Blackwood has shown you is true," Alexander said quietly, and gasps filled the room. "I did approach Maya Chen with a contract marriage proposal. I did pay her $5 million. Our wedding was a business transaction." Maya watched in horror as several board members began whispering about removal procedures. This wasn't part of their plan. Alexander was supposed to let her speak first. However, Alexander continued, his voice growing stronger. "Mr. Blackwood has made one crucial error in his investigation. He documented the beginning of our arrangement, but he failed to account for what happened after." Alexander turned to Maya, and the love in his eyes was so clear, so genuine, that even Richard faltered slightly. "Maya, would you please tell the board about the conversation we had last night?" This was it. Maya stood, her pulse racing but her voice steady. "Mr. Blackwood is right that our marriage began as a business arrangement. But what he doesn't understand is that real love doesn't follow contracts or timelines." She pulled out her phone and connected it to the room's presentation system. "Last night, after Mr. Blackwood's threats, Alexander and I had a very honest conversation. Conversation I recorded because I suspected we'd need to prove our sincerity." The room fell silent as Maya's voice filled the speakers, playing the audio from their conversation the night before. Every word of their confessions, their fears, their declarations of love rang out with devastating clarity. "I fell in love with you too, you impossible man," Maya's recorded voice said. "Tonight doesn't change how I feel about you. Even if we somehow prove our feelings are genuine, the scandal will destroy everything," came Alexander's response. "Maybe it's time to stop living for your grandfather's approval and start living for yourself. You've spent your entire adult life trying to honor your parents' memory by building an empire. But what if honoring them means choosing love over legacy?" When the recording ended, the room was absolutely silent. Maya could see tears in several board members' eyes, including Patricia Walsh's. "That recording could be fabricated," Richard said desperately, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Could it?" Maya asked. "Emma, would you please come in?" The boardroom door opened, and Emma entered in her wheelchair, looking fragile but determined. Behind her walked William Stone, leaning heavily on his cane but very much alive. "Grandfather?" Alexander's voice was barely a whisper. "Hello, my boy," William said warmly. "Been listening from the hallway, quite illuminating this whole affair." Richard had gone pale. "William, you should be resting. This business is too stressful for your condition." "My condition is perfectly manageable when I'm not being told lies about my grandson," William replied sharply. He moved slowly to the head of the table, his presence immediately commanding respect. "See, Richard, I've known about Alexander's contract marriage from the beginning." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Alexander stared at his grandfather in disbelief. "You knew?" Alexander asked. "Of course I knew. Did you really think I wouldn't have my lawyer monitor any large financial transfers from your accounts?" William's eyes twinkled with familiar mischief. "When I learned what you'd done, I was initially disappointed. But then I decided to wait and see what happened next." William turned to address the full board. "My will doesn't require Alexander to marry for love at first sight. It requires genuine affection. And over the past weeks, I've watched my grandson transform from a man afraid to feel anything into someone capable of putting another person's happiness before his own success." William gestured to Emma, who wheeled forward with a tablet in her lap. Emma has been documenting their relationship through photographs and videos she took during her visits. "Would you care to see how a man behaves around a woman he's only pretending to love?" The presentation screen filled with candid images Emma had captured. Alexander reading to Maya on the couch, his expression soft and unguarded. Maya laughing at something Alexander had said while cooking dinner, pure joy on her face. The two of them dancing slowly in the living room to music only they could hear, lost in each other's eyes. "These were taken over the past 2 weeks," Emma said, her young voice carrying surprising authority. "No one acts like this for a contract. This is what real love looks like." Richard was visibly sweating now. This proves nothing.
They could
"Have been staging enough?" William's voice cut through Richard's protests like steel. "Emma, please show them the final piece of evidence." Emma smiled and pulled up a video file. It showed Alexander and Maya in the hospital yesterday. When they'd thought they were alone during Emma's treatment consultation, the audio captured Alexander's voice as he held Maya's hand in the waiting room. "I know I have no right to ask this," Alexander's recorded voice said softly. "But when this is all over, when the contract is fulfilled and you have your money, would you consider staying? Not for business, not for appearances, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it." "You don't have to ask," came Maya's whispered reply. "I'm not going anywhere, Alexander Stone. Contract or no contract, I'm yours." The video showed Alexander kissing Maya's forehead tenderly, both of them unaware they were being recorded by the hospital's security system that Emma had somehow accessed. The boardroom was completely silent. Even Richard seemed to deflate, realizing his case was crumbling around him. Patricia Walsh cleared her throat. "Mr. Blackwood, while the initial contract marriage was certainly unconventional, it's clear that genuine feelings developed between Mr. and Mrs. Stone. The spirit of William Stone's will has been honored." Furthermore, William added, his voice turning cold as he fixed Richard with a stare. "Your harassment of my family ends now. I'm documentation of your threats against my grandson, your attempts to manipulate board members, and your ongoing campaign to destroy the Stone legacy. If you continue this vendetta, I will ensure that every business leader in this city knows exactly what kind of man you are." Richard's face flushed with rage and humiliation. Without another word, he gathered his papers and stormed from the room. "Now then," William continued pleasantly, "shall we proceed with the vote to confirm Alexander's permanent position as CEO?" The vote was unanimous. As the boardroom emptied, Maya found herself alone with Alexander for the first time since their ordeal began. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I can't believe you did all that for me," he whispered against her hair. "I told you I'd fight for us," Maya replied, pulling back to look into his eyes. "Though I have to admit, your grandfather's support was a surprise." Alexander chuckled, the sound rich with relief and happiness. "He's been playing chess while we were playing checkers." "Typical grandfather." "Alexander," Maya said seriously, "I need you to know something. Even if we'd lost today, even if you'd lost everything, I would have stayed. The money, the company, none of that matters compared to how I feel about you." "I know," Alexander said softly, cupping her face in his hands. "That's when I knew you really loved me, when you were willing to lose everything to prove it." We're interrupted by Emma's delighted laugh. "You two going to kiss or not? Because I didn't orchestrate this entire victory just to watch you stare at each other." Maya and Alexander laughed, the tension of the past 24 hours finally breaking. As Alexander's lips found hers in a kiss that was tender and fierce and full of promise, Maya realized that sometimes the best love stories began with the worst reasons. 6 months later, Maya stood in the same hospital where Emma had received her treatment, but this time she was there for the opening ceremony of the Maya Chen Pediatric Wing. Funded by the Stone Foundation, Emma, now in full remission and starting college in the fall, cut the ribbon with tears of joy streaming down her face. "Thank you, Emma," whispered to Maya and Alexander as photographers captured the moment, "for everything."
thank you for being
"The reason I found him," Maya replied, squeezing her sister's hand. That evening, as they returned to their penthouse at Truly, their home, Alexander pulled Maya onto the balcony overlooking the city. The lights twinkled below them like stars, and the air was warm with the promise of summer. "Mrs. Stone," Alexander said formally, though his eyes danced with mischief. "Mr. Stone," Maya replied, playing along, "I have a proposition for you." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Another contract?" of sorts? Alexander dropped to one knee, pulling out a ring box. Inside was the most beautiful engagement ring Maya had ever seen, a brilliant diamond surrounded by emeralds that matched her eyes. Maya Chen Stone, you married me for business, stayed for love, and fought for our future. Will you marry me again? This time for all the right reasons? Maya's eyes filled with tears as she looked down at the man who had changed her entire world. Alexander Stone, I married you once for my sister's life. I'll marry you again for our life together. As Alexander slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to kiss her, Maya marveled at the journey that had brought them here. She'd entered into a contract marriage as a desperate woman trying to save her sister. She was accepting a real proposal. As a woman who had found her soulmate, sometimes, Maya thought as Alexander spun her around in his arms, the best contracts were the ones you broke for love. The end.